Hi everyone, I'm Steve and this is the College Support Network. Welcome to the second portion of the CSU application walkthrough series, where I'll be walking you through the entire CSU application. In the first video, which I released last week, I went over things such as some general tips to help you get started with the application, how to actually create your account. Then I went over the first quadrant, which was related to personal information. If you haven't watched that video yet, I really do recommend it. There's a lot of great information there. For today's video, I'll be going over the last half of the CSU application. More specifically, I'll be going over some of the quadrants that you need to complete before you can submit your application. This includes the academic history quadrant, the supporting information quadrant, and lastly the program materials quadrant. And then to finish off the entire video, I just want to provide you all with some general tips and general information that I have for you before you actually submit. Before we get started, please go ahead and like the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really does help the channel out. Alright, let's get started. The first quadrant I want to go over is the academic histories quadrant. As I mentioned in the first video, this is probably going to be the most crucial part of the entire application, so I really advise you all to be as accurate as possible when you're filling this out. Additionally, in the last video, I did provide you all with a tip which included having your official or your unofficial test scores and transcripts available with you when you're filling out the CSU application. That's going to be really important here in the academic history section, just because, like I said, you want to make sure that the information that you're providing is accurate and truthful to the best of your knowledge. The first two subsections in the academic history quadrant is related to high school coursework as well as high schools attended. For these sections, you will need to add any high schools that you attended regardless if you received a diploma there or not. To add your high school, you simply just need to put the name of the high school or provide information such as your state, city, zip code, or maybe the C code if you do have that available with you. Once you find your school or the schools that you attended, you'll then be asked to provide information about the dates that you attended the school. Additionally, you need to provide information about academic term that the school follows. So you should be answering things such as semester, trimester, quarter, or full year. Once you've added at least one high school, you will then be asked to provide any more information about other high schools you attended if applicable. And then lastly, you'll need to provide information about the graduation status of the high schools that you attended. So simply it's just asking you which high school that you're going to actually graduate from. For traditional freshmen, you also want to select the school you plan to receive your diploma and then add the month or year that you believe you'll graduate. I know some students might not have this information already, so definitely contact your guidance counselor or maybe your college counselor at your local high school to get more information. Next is the high school coursework information. As I mentioned already, you really do want to take your time here and you really want to provide as much accurate information as you can. This is really important because any wrong information that you provide can actually delay your admissions decision as well as deny you outright from the schools that you apply to. One key thing to note here is that you cannot update any information in this section after you submit your application. As you'll find out later in this video, there are some quadrants and some questions and sections that you can actually go back into and update information after you submit your entire application. However, the academic coursework or high school coursework is not one of them. So when you fill out the information now, you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. In this section, you want to make sure you to add all A to G courses that you took in 7th and 8th grade as well as in high school. This also includes summer courses. This means that you should skip any courses such as PE, health, or anything else that isn't related specifically to A to G requirements. Also, as you're inputting the classes that you took, you want to just make sure that you're putting the correct notation as well. So if you took an AP course, make sure to note that it was AP. If it was IB or an honors course, make sure to note that as well. To start adding your classes, you want to click on add a grade level and then select the grade that you want to start filling out your classes for. From there, you also want to select the correct high school as well as the correct academic year for that specific grade level. So for instance, if you want to select 9th grade, just make sure that you have the correct corresponding academic year and then the correct high school that you actually attended. After that, just go ahead and click on the check on the side and then you can start inputting your classes. The great thing about the CSU application is that when you're inputting your courses, they should actually populate automatically as you're typing it. So students only need to simply select from the list of courses that show up once they're typing out their courses. A quick note about the 7th and 8th grade A to G courses. You cannot actually select the middle school that you attended, so you have the option of selecting 7th and 8th grade and then simply selecting the high school that you want to add from there. Another quick thing to know is that for your 12th grade courses, you actually won't be able to put in the grades that you received. For many of you, you're going to be applying to the CSUs before your 12th grade senior year coursework has been completed. So if you're in this situation, just make sure to put in progress for the first semester, quarter, or trimester that you're taking it, and then put plan for the next semester, quarter, or trimester that you plan on taking the course. I know this part of the application is going to feel very long just because you're going to be adding coursework for 4, 5, or maybe 6 years. However, like I keep on saying, you really want to take your time here. The information that you provide here is going to be the most crucial information that you provide because this will determine if you get admitted into the campuses or not.
And with all that being said, I just want to quickly share with you all a pretty cool tool that the CSU Apply website is now using. Basically, it's allowing students that have a CaliforniaColleges.edu profile or account to transport any information regarding their high school grades, high schools attended, high school coursework, and things like that onto the application. This isn't unique to the CSUs. I know the UCs are doing this as well. I didn't mention it in the last video. Also, the Common App is using it, the Coalition app. So it's a really great tool. So if you have a CaliforniaColleges.edu website or a profile, it will definitely allow you to be as accurate as possible just because the information that you put here is through the high schools that you attended. So to start off, before you even add any high schools and your high school coursework, academic information, and things like that, you'll see on this page where it says CaliforniaColleges.edu website on the right. And one thing to know is that it is open to California residents only, and it will give you information about what actually happens when you use the website. So when you transport your data from the CaliforniaColleges.edu website, the high schools you attended, your high school coursework, as well as the grades that you received, and then also your statewide student identification number is all going to be transported into the CSU website. This saves you a lot of time and saves you a lot of trouble of having to manually input all the information I mentioned in the last couple of minutes. So like I said, if you do have this option available to you, I would really recommend using it. I won't actually be walking you through the process of transporting your CaliforniaColleges.edu profile or account onto the CSU Apply website. And the reason for that is because the CSU actually already has a very great and pretty thorough video on that already. I'll go ahead and leave that information and the YouTube link in the description box below. But like I said, it's a really great tool for you all to use if it is applicable to you. So definitely take a look if you can.
The next two subsections in the academic history quadrant is related to colleges attended as well as transcript entry. Similar to the last subsections, for the colleges attended, you simply just want to put the name of the college that you attended and then it should populate automatically. From there, you just click on the colleges that you attended and then you also put the term type, so quarter, semester, trimester, full year, or whatever it may be. After all the information regarding colleges have been entered, you will then move on to the transcript entry where you will list any of the classes that you took. For this section, it's really important for you to report all college coursework that you were enrolled in while you're in high school. This means that you should include courses from which you withdrew, repeated courses, ungraded labs, test credits, gym courses, orientations, or maybe even other non-graded courses. As I already mentioned, you should really have official copies of your transcripts available when you're filling this out. And then you want to list your courses under the correct term, year, and class level. Department prefixes and course numbers must precisely match those on your transcripts. Additionally, you want to enter the courses under the institution where you originally took the course. One cool thing like I mentioned already about the CSU application is that it will actually populate some of the information for you already. So for large colleges that you may have attended, the information will populate once you put in the name of the course, but this is not always the case. If it doesn't, I hate to repeat it again, but please make sure to just have your official transcripts out so you can make sure that the information you're providing is correct. If you don't have access to your transcripts right now, I would actually recommend you all to contact your guidance counselor to get that information. Most of the times, they should have this information on file for you. If not, make sure to just ask them to see if they can help you get that information. Another great thing about the CSU Applied application is that they actually provide you with an A to G matching page, which essentially tells you if you've met the requirements to be eligible to apply to a CSU campus. This is an awesome way to check your eligibility, but to also check if you correctly filled out your coursework. It will provide you with your total years of A to G courses completed, as well as let you know about your cumulative GPA based on the information that you provided. One quick note for all freshman applicants is that you do need to complete all your A to G requirements before you finish your senior year. So this is a really great page to see if you met the eligibility or not. The very next subsection in the academic history quadrant is the standardized testing subsection. Before I get started with this subsection, please remember that the CSUs, at least for fall 2021, will be temporarily suspending the ACT and SAT for admissions purposes. As I mentioned in the California State University overview video, the CSUs will temporarily suspend the use of ACT or SAT examinations in determining admission eligibility for all CSU campuses. Please note that this change is only temporary for the admission eligibility for students applying for the fall 2021, winter 2022, and spring 2022 admission cycles. If you want to learn more about this, please go ahead and watch that video if you haven't done so already. I'll leave it in the cards above, but I'll also leave it in the description box below, as well as some articles that are specifically related to the suspension of the ACT and SAT exams. For students that do still want to share their scores anyway, just note that it won't be used for admissions purposes. Additionally, remember that the test scores that you submit are going to be self-reported. However, it should still show up exactly as it does on the score results that you received based on College Board or the official ACT website. For students intending on taking the test in the future but are currently filling out the application, you do have the option of putting a note that you will be taking it in the future and that you don't have a current score for it. And the very last subsections in the academic history quadrant are related to tests as well. These include the AP, IB, and CLEP exams. One really important thing for all these tests I want students to remember is that it actually won't make or break your application, or it won't actually decide whether you get in or denied from a campus. Specifically for the advanced placement, also known as AP, and interbaccalaureate, also known as IB exams, the scores that you're going to be reporting are going to be self-reported and are mostly used to possibly award you with college credit once you've been admitted to a CSU campus. It really is entirely up to you if you want to submit some, none, or all of your test scores. For students that do choose to submit their test scores, you can select from the drop-down menu and find the exact name of the test that you took. From there, all you really need to provide is the test date as well as the test score that you received. I really advise you all to visit each exam's respective websites to get exact information about the score that you received as well as the date that the test was administered. Okay y'all, so that's the end of the academic history quadrant that you'll have to fill out. I know, like I said, that this portion is going to be very long, and honestly, I really recommend you to take your time and fill it out anyway, just because, as I mentioned numerous times already, this is going to be the most critical part of your entire application. The next quadrant on the CSU application is the supporting information quadrant. More specifically, this is where you're going to be asked about the Educational Opportunity Program, also known as EOP. The primary goal of the CSU Educational Opportunity Program is to improve access for low-income, first-generation, and historically disadvantaged students from California with potential for academic success by making higher education a possibility. I really recommend every single student to apply for this, whether you believe you fit the description I just mentioned or not, just because it's a really great opportunity for you all, and honestly, the application process is pretty short, so it shouldn't really take up too much of your time. To apply for the program, you will need to provide information related to educational programs that you participated in high school, such as AVID, Upward Bound, Talent Search, MESA, and so on. Additionally, if you were a part of any of the programs I just mentioned, or maybe a program that I didn't mention, you want to also make sure to list the years that you were actually a part of it. Next up, you'll then be asked to provide information about your family situation, such as where you plan to live while you're in college, how many siblings are currently in K-12, how many siblings are currently in higher ed, how many siblings have earned a bachelor's degree, and lastly, what languages you speak at home. Similar to the family and household questions that were asked earlier in another subsection, this information is strictly to learn more about your family's situation and to get a better understanding of the world that you come from. And to this exact same point, the CSUs want to learn more about the world that you live in by asking if your family has received assistance or participated in public funded programs such as CalWorks, CalFresh, Welfare, TNAF, school lunch programs, subsidized housing, and many more. I understand that a lot of you may not be familiar with some of the things that I just mentioned, or maybe you don't know anything that I just mentioned, but this is why it's really important for you to have your parents or your legal guardians with you, or maybe even your guidance counselor on Zoom or maybe over the phone if you can, just because the information here is going to be really important to know whether you are going to be a good fit for the EOP program or not. Lastly, for this page, you're going to be asked whether you or your siblings work to contribute to your household income or household expenses that your family lives in. This can be as small as paying just for little bills on the side, or maybe as big as just paying for the actual rent or the mortgage for the house that your family lives in. One important note about the EOP application is that you do not have to submit it at the same time you submit your general application. This means you can always go back if you submit your application already and apply for EOP, or if you want to add or provide more information. However, with that being said, I still recommend students to submit both at the same time if you can, just because you don't want to go back and have to update any information if you don't need to. If you have the time and the ability now to answer these questions, go ahead and just do that and then submit both at the same time. Once you complete the first page of the EOP application, you will then be asked to answer more questions related to your parents' occupation and financial status, such as income and household size. Similar to the financial information that we mentioned in the first video, you want to have your parents or legal guardians here with you when you're filling it out. I really suggest students not to estimate any of the answers and just to have someone there with them with the knowledge that they need to answer these questions, just because it really will determine your eligibility for the program. Once again, if you haven't watched that video yet, I definitely do recommend it. A lot of the information there is going to be crucial to help you fill out some of the information here. The next section in the EOP application is going to ask some autobiographical questions to learn more about your motivation and preparation for college courses. I won't go over each question here just to be conscious of time. However, my key tip here is just to answer them as truthfully as you can. The EOP office really isn't asking for a sob story or maybe even a well-structured or well-organized essay. They simply just want to learn more about who you are, the experiences you've had, and your educational goals. However, although it does not have to be a well-organized or well-structured essay, I still recommend you all to have a proofreader or someone that you trust to review the questions and answers that you've submitted. I do plan on making a specific video about EOP and how to answer some of these questions in the future, so if you're interested in learning more, please make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And the last step of the EOP application is the letters of recommendation. The EOP office requires 2 letters of recommendation. One from an academic counselor or teacher that has information about your academic preparedness for college coursework, and another recommender who can simply discuss your ability to succeed in general. One important thing to remember here is that for your second recommender, it cannot be a friend or family member. I really recommend you all to just contact someone that you trust and is willing to talk about your ability to be successful in general. It can be a priest, a coach, or just anyone else that you trust that is an adult. For your letters of recommendation, I do have a couple tips for you all. The first is just to choose someone that you trust and know will write good things about you. I know this sounds pretty self-explanatory, but I've actually had students in the past when I worked as a college advisor that had a letter of recommendation that did not say good things about them. So before you ask for a letter of recommendation, just make sure that you trust that person to write good things about you. The next step is just to make sure that your recommender knows that you've chosen them to write a letter of rec for you. When filling out the EOP form, you'll have to list the email contact information for your recommender. So once you put this in, they'll actually get a notification in their email letting them know that they've been chosen as a recommender. Once you've notified them, the next step is just to let them know that they're going to be receiving an email in their inbox related to the instructions on how to complete the actual recommendation. The next step is just to understand that it's your responsibility to make sure that your recommenders get their letters in on time. So you want to make sure that you're persistent and reminding them every 2 weeks or so, letting them know that the deadline is coming up. Obviously, you don't want to be annoying and ask every single day and message them every single day, but just be annoying enough so then they could get it in on time. The next step is just to actually give your recommender ample time to submit. If your application is due in 2 weeks, you should have asked more than a month ago. You want to give them ample time because most likely they're going to be writing other recommendations for other students as well. So if you give them only a couple of weeks to write it, they might not be able to get it in on time. My general rule of thumb is to give your recommenders at least 1 full month, and this is the bare minimum, 1 full month to complete your letter of recommendation. Obviously, I think a lot longer is going to be better, but I think you should be looking for around 2 to 1 months in advance. In the application, you can actually put in the EOP recommendation deadline. I recommend students to find the exact deadline that the campuses want for the EOP recommendations, and then on the application, put 2 weeks before then. For example, if you're applying to a CSU campus and the deadline for the EOP recommendation is, let's say, November 1st, put October 15th as the deadline, so then your recommenders think that it's going to be October 15th, but if there's any mistakes or if there's any delays, you still have a 2-week buffer. Lastly, I want to go over the program materials quadrant and then give you some information or some tips about things that you should know before you submit. The last quadrant is the program materials quadrant. This is where you can go and check the campuses that you selected as well as the majors or alternate majors that you chose. Make sure to double check everything on this page is correct and is the actual programs and campuses that you applied to when you first started your application. There are going to be different supplemental questions that you do have to answer. Now I want to go over some last things to look at before you actually submit. As I mentioned in the first video, you could click on the My Application tab and then you could see all 4 quadrants that you need to complete before you submit your application. This is a great way for you to understand and know whether you've completed all the necessary steps and necessary quadrants to submit. And once you've done your own check 2 or 3 times, I really do recommend you to have a guidance counselor, maybe a teacher, a friend, a family member, just someone that you trust or multiple people that you trust to review your application to make sure that the information you provided is as accurate as possible. Like I said, a lot of the sections you cannot go in and make changes after you submit. So the first time you submit, you want to make sure all the information is correct. Once you're done with having your multiple checks, you could go ahead and click on submit at the top. In this section, you will see the amount you will need to pay as well as if you've been offered any fee waivers based on the household size and income that you entered earlier in the application. On this page, you'll also see the different campuses that you're applying to, and the great thing about the CSU application is that you can apply to each campus individually or you can apply to all of them at the exact same time. It's really entirely up to you. My general advice is just to submit them all at the same time if you've already completed your review and had multiple people look it over as well. Okay, so that's basically it. That's the entire CSU application. Pretty long, right? Now all you really need to do is submit and pay if it's applicable to you. Alright y'all, so that's all the information I have for this video. However, before I do let you go, I have a couple questions for you all. The very first question is, how many CSU campuses do you plan on applying to? The second question is, are there any sections or quadrants that I mentioned in this video or maybe in the past video that you want more clarification on? If you like, I can make a dedicated or in-depth video about any things that you mentioned, so make sure to leave all that in the comments below. With all that being said, that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching today's video. You could have been doing anything else, but you spent it here with me learning about college. I think that's super awesome. As always, thumbs if you learned and subs if you loved. Take care, y'all.